Hello, BookTube. Well, sorry about that. The last video cut off because my phone gave me a notice that I was running out of space. I was running out of storage to make videos. And apparently the notification for telling me that also stops everything from happening. You can't just tap the screen, acknowledge the notification, and go back to what you were doing. So the video was stopped, and I had two realizations in rapid succession in the few seconds after that. The first one, once I checked, was that, of course, I had plenty of storage space. I don't know what the phone was thinking. And two, that it felt wrong both to go back and finish what was, let's face it, a lackluster mail haul, when there was only the one book, and it was the guest book by Sarah Blake, and I was just in the middle of talking about it. It felt wrong to do that, but it also felt wrong for that to be the only video of the day. I was going to let the last mail haul of the week be the only video of the day, but it feels like I'd be shortchanging you if I did that. So I'm going to make another video. As you can tell, I'm standing. I'm standing up. Don't get crazy. I still don't have pants on, but I wanted to do, I'll do a random bookshelf tour, an impromptu bookshelf tour. Thousands of you are here who were not here the last time I did any bookshelf tours in this room, this little book room. So we'll just do that. We'll do one of those and see what we have here. Everything in this room has moved around to one extent or another in the last 2 years, which I think is the last time I did a bookshelf tour. So even those of you who remember those older ones might see some new stuff here. But we'll do that, and then we'll call it a day. So we'll just do the very top shelf of this one bookcase here. Starting with a Penguin Classic I see that should not be here. There should be no Penguin Classics here. Okay, this is the Arthur Cooper translation of Li Po in a mass market. This shouldn't be up here. This should be over there, over my shoulder with the Penguin Classics. I think that I took it out, that I separated it from the other Penguin Classics because there was recently a new biography of Li Po, who's now called Li Bai, I think. I wanted to reread Li Po in order to read that biography, but it ended up the biography was full of his poetry anyway, so I didn't need to do it. And I think I just forgot that the book was up there. So what is this next one? Okay, all right. This is Walter Muir Whitehill. This is Boston in the Age of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. As you can see from the banner, this is there was a series of books called The Centers for Civilization, all talking about eras and countries through the lens of specific cities. And Walter Muir Whitehill was a wonderful, wonderful person, a wonderful, wonderful guy, and he quickly realized that this was his book. That obviously he was the heart and soul of Boston. Obviously he was going to do a book on Boston. And I remember when this first came out, this was in the 70s, I think. 1966. When this came out in 1966, I remember thinking, The Age of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, I kind of like that. And it's a wonderful book. A wonderful book on Boston, a Boston book that you really ought to have. And what is this next one? Oh, okay. This is an author who's come up a few times for me recently. Great. She's come up in terms of her short stories, but this will do just fine. This is A Time in Rome by Elizabeth Bowen, the great short story writer Elizabeth Bowen. And this is a nonfiction work about just a travel guide, a travel log of being in Rome. What is this? Okay. All right, enough with Elizabeth Bowen and Walter Muir Whitehill. Now we have a classic, ladies and gentlemen. This is by Bruce Grether, and this is book 1 in the Rendezvous in a Ruined City. This is book 1 of Moontusk. This is a fantasy novel about bearish young men forcing themselves on each other. It's set in a fantasy world in which there are telepathic mastodons. It's something of a classic. I would never part with my copy of Moontusk. I may even have reviewed it. If I've reviewed it, I will make sure to leave a link down below. This next one looks fairly new. Oh. Okay, what is this doing here? This is a new book, or relatively new anyway. This is from 2016. This is by David Anthony Durham, and it is The Risen. It's a big, a good historical novel about Spartacus. I read this. I think I also reviewed it. I don't know what it's doing here. Well, first of all, I don't know why it's not with other fiction, and also, to be more blunt, I don't know why I kept it. Well, anyway, there it is. The Risen, a Spartacus novel. I should probably redo this. That shouldn't be here. And then this next one is lying flat. Oh, it's a National Geographic book. National Geographic did a whole bunch of really good books, original artwork, tons of originally commissioned art or articles, ranging the whole spectrum of whatever their subject is. And this one is the National Geographic Book of Dogs, which I have in this. I have it without a dust jacket. I remember when I got this. Did I mention when I got this anywhere? No annotation of any kind. But I remember that when I got this, my first thought was the Brattle will provide a copy of this with the dust jacket. That's what I want. I want a copy of this with the dust jacket. Like, for instance, here is their book on Vikings with a dust jacket. And it'd just be a matter of time. I will sooner or later find this with a dust jacket. I definitely want the book. This has a guide to every breed and tons about the history of Okay, I opened to the section that gives us a guide to each dog breed, and what is the first thing that I see? How does that section open? Ooh. A very well groomed miniature schnauzer. That was totally unplanned. I wonder what this says about miniature schnauzers, if anything. The terrier. Yes. For the first time in my life, I have a terrier. Never thought that would happen. I wonder if it's going to mention anything about their miniature schnauzer is being bothered by another dog. The heavy beard that all but hides the muzzle of the miniature schnauzer provides him with a comic opera mask behind which he can plan his endearing mischief undetected. This playful little dog loves to be with people. Boy, is that true. Oh, God. He'll shun his own kind anytime a chance for to consort with and tease his human friends. That's absolutely true. Frida is a star on the street, and only because she is so friendly to strangers. She has no interest in other dogs beyond yelling at them, beyond telling them what to do. And precious little interest in the natural world. But, oh, my God, if a random person comes along, she lights up. Derived from his larger cousin, the standard schnauzer, by way of a cross with a toy breed, the miniature does not share the blood and inheritance of the British terriers. However, his efficiency as a vermin killer more than qualifies him for the title of terrier. And also, I can attest to, we used to have a very healthy population of very happy, contented mice here in this house. They knew perfectly well that there were 2 dogs in here, and they knew perfectly well that both those dogs were so old that they could barely get off the couch by themselves. So they bred and prospered, and they died en masse. As soon as Frida could move on her own, as soon as she wasn't a milk puppy, they were all doomed. Absolutely doomed. Although the miniature schnauzer is peace-loving by nature, long, powerful jaws and a strongly muscled body equip him to take care of himself in a scrap. His harsh, wiry coat is characteristic pepper and salt color. Okay, well, the National Geographic Book of Dogs nails my little Frida perfectly. And this next one, oh, this is lovely. Okay, this is a big hardcover with a dust jacket. This is the Literary Guide to the Bible by Robert Alter and Frank Kermode, with a lovely finished cover there. Robert Alter, the great Bible translator, and Frank Kermode, the great literary critic. And this is just the two of them opining about that subject, book by book in the Bible, just the literary aspect of the Bible. Exactly the kind of thing that we were trying to stress when we did our New Testament read-along. Okay, all right, okay, this also doesn't belong here. Oh boy. All right, this is the collected essays of Catherine Ann Porter. This is literary essays, book reviews. This is not nearly the whole of what she wrote. In terms of book reviews especially, she wrote book reviews like everybody else in the world. She wrote book reviews whenever she could for whoever would pay. You get, $25, that was a heating bill. And it was easy to do. You're reading the books anyway. But this should be on the bookcase behind me with other literary essays. But they are wonderful. They are wonderful. She is one of the many contemporary authors last 150 years who are much better at this sort of thing than they are at the fiction for which they are taught and renowned. I guess there's no money in writing, occasional essays and literary reviews and whatnot. Unless you're very lucky, there's no money in it. But even so, I will take this book over her collected stories any day of the week. And what have we... Oh, okay. All right. The next two are turtle books. So they belong with the nature books. They don't belong up here. The first one is Donald Jackson's Life in a Shell, a physiologist's view of a turtle, which is wonderful. And then this next one is by Barbara Brenessel, and it's Diamonds in the Marsh. It's about diamondback terrapins who live in marshland. And I have loved both of these books. I think turtles are fascinating. I think anybody thinks that. I've loved both of these books. And I'm glad I kept them together, but they belong with the other nature books. So I'll hold all these books apart and we'll do that. Okay. All right. Wow. Talk about belonging elsewhere. All of these next ones are graphic novels. Big, fat, hardcover graphic novels. Fantastic. The first one is Alice and Hitch. This is The Ultimates, Volume 1. For a while, Marvel Comics had another universe, the Ultimates universe, where they reimagined all of their signature characters. Ultimate Spider-Man ran forever and ever and ever, and was a fan favorite, right alongside the normal Spider-Man. And the Ultimates are the Ultimates universe version of the Avengers. So you have Captain America and Thor and Iron Man, and the Hulk and Hank Pym, Giant Man and the Wasp. And I read these when they were first coming out, and I thought they were incredible. Just amazing. Some of the disturbing elements of the author's writing have grown to bother me more in intervening years, but even so, I thought they were amazing. Just amazing. An incredibly convincing reimagining of the Avengers for the modern day, and boy oh boy, the movies owe a lot to the Ultimates, to this run of comic books, especially the movies version of Tony Stark as Iron Man. It's virtually entirely lifted from the Ultimates. But this has some wonderful, wonderful moments in it. There's a fantastic, I'll never be able to get to it right away, but there's a fantastic moment where Henry Pym, in the traditional comic books, Henry Pym is Giant Man, he's Ant-Man, and he's a partner to, and then later husband to, Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp. They're both able to shrink to insect size. And they're founding members of the Avengers, and they're in tons and tons of Avenger comics. And late in the Avengers, hundreds and hundreds of issues into the Avengers run, there was a storyline where Hank Pym, who was increasingly portrayed as unstable mentally, struck Janet Van Dyne across the face and had to face trial for it with his fellow Avengers. It was poorly drawn, so I didn't keep the issue, but it was a remarkably well done adult storyline to do, and it permeates into the Ultimates universe, because in this universe Hank Pym is also unstable and also a bit of a brutalizer, much worse than the character in the standard Marvel universe. And when the Captain America in the Ultimates universe finds out that Hank Pym has attacked his Janet Van Dyne, that he's attacked her, he goes rogue. He goes off reservation for the Ultimates and hunts down Hank Pym at a bar on his own. And the issue, I bought all these things as individual issues, not as a big hardcover collection. And the individual issue ends with Nick Fury saying, "Squadron leader, this is General Nicholas Fury. I want you to tell Captain America that he is not, I repeat, not, to injure Dr. Pym under any circumstances. We're on the brink of a massive extraterrestrial assault here, and all post-human personnel are required. Do you copy?" But it's too late, because inside the bar, Captain America is saying, "A word in your ear, Dr. Pym." And that was the final page of the issue. You knew perfectly well when he was going to go outside, and Giant Man or no Giant Man is going to beat the crap out of Henry Pym. And that's just what happens in the following issue. But those issues have tons and tons of payoff moments like that. Fantastic. Oh, great. This is also a big hardcover graphic novel. This is Tales of Asgard. And despite the Oliver Coipel cover, which is a massively elaborate fold-out thing, is that right? Am I remembering this correctly? Oh, maybe not. Okay. But this has, the cover is modern, but the insides are Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, inked by Vince Colletta. The only difference being a truly incredible recoloring. The recoloring here is amazing. If you do a side-by-side comparison, it's just amazing, the work they did. Lovingly, from panel to panel. Collecting in Thor's comic books, there was Thor's Adventure for a long time. There was Thor's Adventure for the first 10 pages, and then there was 5 pages of a backup feature called Tales of Asgard, in which Stan Lee got to tell stories about Thor's homeland and the gods and whatnot. And at first it was sort of his ability to just tell mythology. But then he couldn't resist. He was a hack storyteller at heart, and he started telling stories about adventures that Thor had in Asgard. I loved it, and it's been collected in little anthologies from time to time. But this was a series that came out first as comic books. And the first one I thought, okay, well, I have all of these. I've read them to the point where I can memorize them. So I'll just buy the first issue just for old time's sake. And then if they make a graphic novel out of all of these, a collection at the end, I'll definitely keep that because I don't have them all in one volume. And then I saw the recoloring job that they did, and I realized, oh my God, this is amazing. I wish that all reprints could be like that. It's probably cost prohibitive to do that. Okay, then we have another hardcover graphic novel, one of the greatest Superman stories ever told. This is Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow by Alan Moore and Kurt Swan. Kurt Swan was a legendary Superman artist who'd done him for decades and decades, did the old standard version of Superman, stouter out the middle, high school gym teacher, basically is how he was described, with the standard spit curl. And this was right before Superman was canceled completely for the first time in 60 years and relaunched with a miniseries by John Byrne for the new era, after Crisis on Infinite Earths, when Superman could be reimagined from the ground up. And Alan Moore had been vocal about how you don't have to scrap your entire continuity to tell invigorating new stories, and he put his money where his mouth is. He wrote a two-part story. Again, this came out as individual issues that I got. He wrote a two-part story about Superman that ends the old Superman storyline, that where horrible things start to happen. Superman's enemies start to become lethal instead of just mischievous. One in particular. And all of his side cast, all of his cast of characters are brought together for one big final battle. And it is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Now, Kurt Swan's artwork feels decidedly antiquated. You don't know what to think about this artwork anymore. But I loved it. And I thought it was it was a little bit snotty, but it was a great little thumb in the eye to the idea that you need to remake Superman in order to tell great Superman stories. You, of course, don't. You can keep all of that old continuity and make a great story if you want to. And this has all of his supporting cast in the background. The background crowd for the original, this was the cover of the second issue of the original release, and the background crowd for that original cover was very different than these. One thing I'm very happy that they kept in common, front and center there, that balding man in the suit and tie, is Julius Schwartz, who was more responsible for this era of Superman than any other single person. So I'm happy to see that. Okay, so there's a great Superman thing up here. Then, okay, all right, this is, I got this for Jim Chung's artwork. This is The Children's Crusade, Avengers The Children's Crusade, a very, very long story in which two characters from a team called the Young Avengers turn out to be, somehow or other, the children of Wanda Maximoff. And in this miniseries, it's got terrific artwork. Let me show you the artwork. Look at that 2-page spread. Good Lord. In this miniseries, Wanda Maximoff has fallen in love with Victor Von Doom, which is, those of you who are new to comics, probably not a good idea. I mainly got this for the artwork, and I periodically look through it again for the artwork. The story is a bit on the ridiculous side. Everybody's in it, though. The Avengers, Dr. Doom, Magneto, of course, because he's the father of Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, and therefore allegedly the grandfather of these two children of hers, and everybody else as well. It's just a big, sprawling storyline. Okay, all right. Another big Avengers storyline. I think we've seen this on this channel before. This is also something that I got only for the artwork at first. And then I came to very much like how it was being done. This is Brian Michael Bendis is the writer, and the artist is Mike Deodato, doing the best work of his career up until this point. And it's Dark Avengers. In the wake of a big cosmic invasion storyline, the Avengers are shattered and demoralized, and Harry Osborn, the original Green Goblin, is the hero. He stepped forward during that invasion and did something that looked on the surface to be heroic. We know that it wasn't, but the public doesn't know that. So the entire public trust and the government trust of the United States is shifted to him. And he makes his own Avengers team out of supervillains. they're horrible fascist creatures who are parading in front of the world as superheroes. And I read the storyline as it was starting to develop, and I thought how interesting this is. I wonder if you can pull it off. And Bendis does a fantastic job, just incredible. There are even glimmers throughout this story of of Norman Osborn really kind of wishing that this farce, this charade that he's pulling on the American people were actually true, that he actually were a hero. And the whole time that he's doing this with his fake Avengers team, he's also conferring with supervillains and with bad guys like Doctor Doom, who appears in here as well, and also Prince Namor the Submariner, who has some wonderful moments in this book. There's one where Namor tells Norman Osborn, listen very carefully, human. The fact that I even allow you to speak directly to me is a gift I bestow upon you. Do not order me. You beg for my appreciation and wait to see if I choose to bestow it upon you. And that's because Norman Osborn is losing his cookies over not being instantly obeyed by everyone around him. Well, I'm going to have to read that again. That was a very good storyline in the Avengers lore. And we've got 2 boxed things to end this off, and this little impromptu thing here. Okay. All right. This box set is just, it looks like just great. Oh, 75 Years of Batman. Okay. This is just great Batman storylines. So you have Hush, in which a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne becomes a supervillain. You have The Court of Owls, which went on forever and ever. It's just unbelievably wordy. It has beautiful artwork. And you also have Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller and Lynn Varley, which is one of the greatest Batman stories of all time, one of the greatest comic book stories of all time, about I'm sure you all know of it, about an old and bitter 50-something Bruce Wayne who has retired long since as Batman and who is drawn back into being Batman. A very standard storyline, but boy, oh boy, Miller hits it right out of the park. So this is an uneven box set, to say the least. Hush and Court of Owls both have absolutely beautiful artwork. And I suspect that's why this appealed to me, because I have Dark Knight Returns in a couple of different editions. So let's look at this last one here, and then we'll be done. Okay, all right, okay, speaking of the devil, this is another edition of Dark Knight Returns. Great, okay, fantastic. This is a box set of hardcover reprints of all 4 of the original issues of Dark Knight Returns. It originally came out as a 4-issue miniseries in just ordinary comic books. And I read the first one and was blown away by Frank Miller's artwork and blown away by the storyline. A dystopian future storyline really suits Batman. I loved it. I just loved it. I thought the dramatic beats in it were absolutely flawless. To the point where I was incredibly eager to read the next issue. And it went on that way, just the way the great comics always do. The great comics make you incredibly eager to read the next issue. Until I got to the next issue, and that's when I started to get a hint that Frank Miller was going to make Superman a fascist lickspittle. And that turned out to be true. I should have known that. From knowing what I know about Frank Miller, I should have known that. But somehow I was hoping that he would get out unscathed. But no, Superman is a fascist lickspittle who's being handled by a 200-year-old Ronald Reagan. I just sighed when I thought that. It was worse than sighing, because when I saw that, I realized that by the time that issue appeared and I saw that characterization, I knew that this was going to be immortal, that it was going to be one of the greatest things in comic book literature. Infinitely anthologized, infinitely talked about, infinitely imitated, infinitely known in the comic book world. So by issue 2 and 3, I was thinking, oh no, this is going to be the characterization of Superman for an entire generation of comic book fans. And it turned out to be true. So maximum damage being done there, but still, the book itself. And there is something, I remember when I got this and tried it out, there is something that you really do gain by reading these in individual issues rather than as one collection. You really do gain something by that. Miller was, knew comic books backwards and forwards, and he clearly constructed it that way, not the way writers and artists do today, with the eye on a graphic novel, but rather he constructed each issue. So reading it like this is not just affectation. It really does help the reading experience. All right, so there you go. That is an impromptu bookshelf tour, booktube, of just stuff that happens to have piled up here. It doesn't make much sense. I'm understanding now why it's all up here. It doesn't make much sense. All of these things should be resorted elsewhere. So I will commence to do that now. I have made a little work for myself, but I'm hoping that at least takes the sting out of not only the abrupt ending of that last video, but also the kind of lackluster contents. But I'm going to wrap it up for now, because I don't like standing up this long. but I will be back. We have plenty more to talk about. Probably not today. Probably plenty of videos tomorrow. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.